So our plan for this particular lesson is to create our walking skeleton, and to do this we're going to need to create some projects. Now we're going for a multi-project solution to build this particular application, and our project is going to be made up of several class libraries and a web API project. Now regardless of whether you're using Visual Studio Code as your code editor, or you're using Visual Studio the full version because you're on Windows and you just prefer that, or if you're using Rider from JetBrains, I would still recommend following on this part of the course exactly as I'm doing now, because the templates we get from the .NET SDK may not be identical to the templates that you get given with Visual Studio or Rider. But I know for sure that if we all use the .NET CLI to create our project templates, then we're going to be working from the same place. So what we need to do first of all is just double check that everything's tickety-boo in terms of what SDK we have installed and the runtimes we have installed. So I'm on the latest version of the SDK at the time of recording, and it starts with 3.0. So please make sure that your version of the SDK is starting with at least 3.0. It doesn't matter too much if the version of the SDK has been updated on the third segment here, but if it's gone up to 3.1, then there may be some subtle differences that I haven't known about at the time I recorded this particular video. So we've got our .NET Core SDK, we've got our runtimes installed for 3.0, and what we're going to do now is make use of the CLI to create our projects. Now, first thing we need to do is create a directory to store our solution in. So I'm just going to call this particular directory reactivities, which isn't a real word, but that's what we're going with for this particular course. And then I'm just going to cd into this new folder. Now, in order to use the .NET CLI to do this, we can get some help with this. And if we just run the .NET-H, this is going to give us a list of all the different commands that we can use to create our projects and solutions. So there's a whole bunch of different commands. Some of them we'll be using throughout this course, but the one that we're going to focus on first of all is the .NET New command, which allows us to create a new .NET project or a file. So let's just get some contextual help for the .NET New command, and we can do that by typing in .NET New-H, and if we press return here, then this gives us a list of all of the different project types and the project templates that are available with the .NET CLI. And if I scroll up, there's quite a bunch available nowadays with this particular utility. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating class libraries, and we're also going to create a web API project, which is going to act as our startup project and contain all of our API controllers and the endpoints. Now, we're also creating a React client application as part of this, and you'll notice that there is an option to create an ASP.NET Core with React.js. And this is a different type of project to what we're going for on this particular course. This is a web MVC SPA project. And of course, our React application is going to be a single page application. But what we want to do with our particular project is create a web API and keep the React project completely separate in terms of its functionality. And we're going to connect our React projects, if you like, to our .NET Web API project via API calls over the HTTP protocol. So it's a slightly different kind of project, and we're not going to use that, and we're just going to go with the Web API one in this particular case. And another type of file we can create in here is the solution file. Now, because we're going for multiple projects as part of our solution, we're going to create a solution file which is going to act as a container for our .NET Core projects. So what we'll do first of all is we'll just create a new solution file, and what we'll do is we'll just say .NET's new SLN. And this is going to use the name of the containing folder to give our solution file its name. So I'm just going to say .NET New SLN and press return. And this goes ahead and creates our solution file. And if I list the contents of this directory, obviously I'm on a Mac and I'm just using ls to list the contents. But if you're on a Windows computer, obviously this is dir for yourself. But ls for Mac, and we can see that we have the reactivity solution file created here. Now the next thing we need to do is create our class library files. And initially we're going to split our project up into an API project, an application project, which is going to contain all of our business logic. We're going to have a domain project, which is going to contain just our domain entities. And we're also going to have our persistence project, which is going to be responsible for communicating with our database. Now, everything apart from the API project is going to be a class library. So let's go ahead and create these. We'll start with our domain project. So what we'll do is we'll say .NET new, and we'll use the class lib template, and we'll need to give this a name so that it creates the new project inside a containing folder based on what this name is, and we'll call this one simply domain and press return. And this goes ahead and creates that particular project, and if I list the contents of my directory once again, then we can see that we now have a domain folder as well as our reactivity solution. And if I just cd into the domain folder and list the contents, we can see that this gives us a example class, class1.cs. It also gives us a csproj file, and this is referred to as our project file. Each project has to have a .csproj file, and an object folder which gets created whenever we build a project. And we'll take a look at these in a bit more detail in the next lesson, but for now we're just going to continue creating our project. So I'm just going to cd back up again into the reactivities folder, and let's just go ahead and quickly create the rest of the projects that we need. So the next one we need, I'm just going to say .NET new class lib, and this one's going to be our application project. And I cancelled that because I forgot to specify the -n, so this is going to be called the application project. And that goes ahead and creates this one. And the next one we need is going to be for our persistence project. So let's just go ahead and create this one as well. And what we should have now in our directory is 3 folders and the solution file. And last but not least, we're going to create the API project. So this time we'll say .NET new web API, and we'll give it a name very simply of API and press return. So that's our projects created, and if we list the contents of our directory, this is what you should see at this moment in time. Now, these are all just standalone projects at the moment. Our solution file knows nothing about these particular projects. And what we're also going to need to do is add the project dependencies to each other so that each project knows what it depends on, and we'll take care of that in the next lesson.